Welcome back, everyone, to Business and Life Stories with James and Mike. This week, I am so happy we have Lindsay Gordon with us. Many of you have already heard of her, and she's been on a bunch of casts. She's getting pretty famous. I'm sure this was like a 2-week overnight success. Not really. You're all entrepreneurs. You know better. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just slightly longer than 2 weeks.
So you're running a Life of Options. Okay. So URL on your website, and you're a career coach for the analytically minded. And yet somehow you have great communication skills and you're personable and you get invited places that most of us engineer and gearheads don't go. So how did you create this magic?
Yeah, I had the great fortune of going to an incredible engineering school. Shout out to Olin College in Needham, Massachusetts. And they focus not only on the math and science and the things you would expect as an engineer, but you also get to focus on all of the other pieces of being a full human. That I did classes in finance, and I did classes in French literature, and I did trapeze, and I did all of the other fun things. So yes, I'm an engineer at heart. And there are a lot of other things that I'm interested in and curious about. So I've always really enjoyed experiencing like both sides of that.
So what was it like for you starting a Life of Options as a company? Was this, you've done other things, so what propelled you to do what you're doing now?
Yeah. I like to say that I have fallen into every career transition so far, like all good career transitions, right? No plan, did not think I was going to run a business at all. For me, so I started off in engineering and I worked as a recycled water engineer in Australia. After that, I completely fell into technical support at Google. And I discovered that I am one of the really weird humans that loves customer service. So that can be another strange tangent. And then when I was there, I was talking to people about their career because people would join our team and they were all stressed out about, how do I talk to my manager? And what if I get stuck on this support team? And I don't know what I'm doing with my career. I feel like I'm behind everybody else. So I just ended up chatting to people a lot. Long story short, people said you would be a good coach. I had no idea what that was. Went and tested it out and took a class, ended up loving it, did a 1.5 year long certificate. My plan was to move to a more career development focused role at Google. And then I did that. But on the side, people were saying, I have people to refer to you. Are you taking clients yet? And so I said, no. Like, this is not the plan. I'm doing this thing over here. But I said yes. I ran the business on the side for about 1 year and then was like, oh, I think I have something pretty interesting and unique that I'm up to. And so in July of 2016, so we're at 6 years full time now, I decided to take the business full time.
Wow. That's a pretty good way to overcome typical business infant mortality stage too.
Yeah. I love talking about like de-risking the process as much as possible of knowing if you want to do your own thing. So, I tried out the career coaching in the company that I was at. I tried doing my thing on the side while I had the full-time job. So it works differently for different people. For me, that really worked, but I really felt like I'd tested it out and I'm like, no, I like this thing and I'm getting results and clients seem to be happy. So I think this feels like the time to make the move.
This is a perfect example of the redundancy principle we had in the rocket business, where we'd be running on one set of engines, but there's the secondary set that can be turned on if we need them. I just love this.
Yeah.
So one of the things you put in your really neat blog was about how to find a coach, and you basically put different types of coaches in like 3 buckets. Mm-hmm. James and I have not seen very many, and there's all kinds of business coaches out there, but we haven't seen very many have that courage to say, here's the basic things you need to look at and really think about. And so good for you doing that.
Thank you.
Did you realize
care.
that was rare, or did you just decide to do it?
Yeah, so number one, my brain just works in frameworks. So for everything, there's a framework in my brain. So I'm like, okay, career coaching and how to hire one. There's definitely a framework for that. And I am so dedicated to fit. I think there are a lot of coaches out there who will, we mentioned before the show, people just will do anything, right? Like, I'm a coach, I'll coach you on anything. But for me, it's actually incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important that you get the right fit for you, because there are different resources out there. And if I am the wrong fit for you, I want to know that. I want you to know that. And I want to connect you to the right fit. So it was just part of helping people understand what is out there, what am I looking for, how can I connect with the person that's right for me. And, I had that conversation with people over and over and over again, whether they have submitted their information at my website, whether we are on a call to see if we're going to be a good match. I'm like, fit is the most important to me. So I'm listening for fit. I want you to listen for fit. I will try to convince you when I'm not the right fit for you. So I just feel like it's a much better conversation when we're both on the same team of figuring out who is the right fit for an individual.
So what are some keys that the analytically minded person, and let's say they're a company founder, the person they're reporting to is not analytically minded? What are some key elements of that would help communication between these two types of brains?
That's a good question. Let me think for a moment. I feel like even just being aware of that and being able to share that, right? Like, I think of myself as analytically minded. Here's how I'm thinking about things. Probably before I've come to our one-on-one, I have considered XYZ. I'm thinking about it in this way. How are you coming to the conversation? What is your brain doing? How are you seeing the conversation? And I think even just being really clear about that can bridge a lot, because we all have different parts. So yes, we're analytically minded, but we're not 100% analytically minded. So I think it's really just a conversation about, this is how my brain works. This is how your brain works. How are we best going to communicate about the thing we're trying to communicate about?
You just reminded me of this really great Warren Buffett quote. I heard him say once that he and his partner, Charlie Munger, were two halves, and between the two of them, they had a full brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think that's really neat. James looks like he's getting ready for one of his ethereal questions.
Yeah. Is career transition a bigger thing now than even, just say, pre-COVID or a few years ago? I would imagine. I mean, are you saying, or are you hearing that, you know what, I realize that things don't last forever, things can change, I've been too long kind of making do with XYZ? Are those the sort of things you're beginning to hear more now than, say, in 2017? Or
Yeah, I think there have been a lot of interesting phases to this pandemic and how people are thinking about it. So I think right when it hit, some people had been floating along with what I like to call kind of like the conspiracy of complacency, or the culture of complacency, right? Like, I worked at Google. I know what golden handcuffs feel like. I know what, we try to sell the fancy perks and get people all jazzed about that, even if they don't like the thing. So I think that was much easier before the pandemic. And when it hit, I think people had to really take a look at, what do I want to be up to in this world? What is my contribution? How much can I actually survive or enjoy, or whatever it is, for that individual person? And so I think it became a lot about contribution. That was like a big existential question for people. And then I think there have been moments where it's been like, oh my gosh, there is so much going on, right? The kids are home from school. I'm now the teacher and, having to do the job. I cannot make any changes. So there was a moment where people were just like, I'm going to hang on and survive everything that I've got going on. And changing career is not the moment for it. Now I think we're in another interesting phase. I just had a conversation with a client this morning who said, my company is having people come back to the office, 3 days a week or whatever it is. I don't think that actually works for me anymore. And so I'm thinking about, is that a reason why I want to make a transition? So I think kind of like the weird, who knows really what it's going to look like, but the return to work is really causing people to think about, is this job still the right one for me? And do I need to make a bigger change?
I used to do a bit of coaching myself, and the thing which is important for me personally, I guess, is just become the best version of myself. Certainly my generation, coming through kind of white middle class, it was kind of expected to go into maybe accountancy or medicine or law or that kind of doing well with grades at school, then going through university, etc. I could never, I just never did that. But I guess I guess when I found out that, hey, I can create my own future and I can work on becoming that more of a whole person, was a really big breakthrough for me a few years ago. Are you seeing that as well? Are you seeing people sort of saying, wow, like I can actually begin to create my own future and I can actually become a better version of myself by changing my career, by bringing in more family time or more spare time, or are you hearing those sort of things now?
Absolutely. And I think it really is about what actually lights up the individual. So I love to promise my clients deeply unsexy results. That is everything that I am selling in my business, because here's what we're doing none of. We're doing none of like, oh my gosh, I got the fancy job that everybody else wants, or, oh my gosh, I just have more money and more title. And, none of those things actually give the majority of people fulfillment. And so I help them figure out what is actually fulfilling to them. And, one example recently is somebody who had been a lawyer for a long time. And they were like, you know what? I've always thought about being a writer. What if I actually gave myself a chance to do that? Who knows if it's going to be the thing that I want? Who knows if it's going to be my life's work? But I'm going to give myself the chance because that feels really authentic to me. And so these results that I get people are things that don't look like anything to the outside, maybe, but making that choice that actually feels good to you is so meaningful to the individual. So that's why I love to talk about deeply unsexy results and what actually works for you, minus all of the pressure of what society thinks, what your family thinks, what your cultural expectations are, because there's so much of that. So yes, I am all about my whole message. I'm writing a book. It's coming out on September 5th. It's called Right for You. And that's all I care about is, what do you actually want in your one precious life that you have?
That is just so important. And I feel that another element of coaching, be it personal coaching or business coaching, is the concept of fear, isn't it? Historically, humans have always backed away from fear. It kind of kept us alive back in the day when we lived in caves and only had to go out and hunt when we were all hungry and we wanted to stay away from crazy stuff and other tribes and all that. And obviously in this day and age, there's a lot of that within kind of going over the fear precipice kind of thing. And obviously that must very much come into career coaching as well. It's sort of, I've, as you described it, the golden handcuffs, hey, it's made me comfortable, holistically, maybe a bit flabby around the edges, kind of just as an analogy. But I actually want to like trim down and kind of feel vibrant and kind of energetic again. is that concept of fear coming in the conversations, but also are people realizing that there's always going to be another opportunity? So if the writing career, the writing period for the lawyer didn't work out, I'm sure, hey, there's always another law job around the corner if you want to go and find it. Are you having those sort of conversations?
Yeah, I think those conversations really interestingly kind of center around potential. And I don't say that in the stressful way that we can sometimes talk about, like living up to your potential, you know, like, oh, you have to do something amazing and great and strive and all of that. But it's more a conversation about the person's feeling of their own potential, of just like, what do I want to get up to in this world? And I think if we can really hone in on that, again, minus all the pressure, because there's so much of that, then somebody can say, like, sure, I've got the fear, absolutely, but what I'm really committed to are my values of this, are my experience of life in this direction, are, you know, being a role model for my kids to make sure that I'm living an adventurous life that's actually, you know, authentic and exciting to me. So I want to make sure it's not around like, you have to be great, you have to do something excellent in your life, but tapping into what is your potential? What do you want to be up to? And I think that can help people get through the fear. Also, my favorite thing about fear is a teaching by Tara Moore, who wrote the book Playing Big. And she has this fascinating article about the two kinds of fear. So apparently in biblical Hebrew, there are a lot of different words for fear. Mm-hmm. And she highlights two of them. And one of them is basically like lizard brain fear, right? Like if you do this thing, you are going to be eaten by the thing. It's existential, and that fear gets us stopped a lot. But she also talks about this other kind of fear that has an aspect of awe to it. And so it's a fear we get when we step into places bigger than we're used to being, when we feel like we're moving towards things that might be more of a calling. So we're still terrified, but it has that like tinge of excitement. So I just love that distinction between lizard brain fear and the fear of moving towards the thing that you're excited about. So go and read her article because she says it much better than I just did, but it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I need to read that. How or what are some of the fallacies in thinking you find with analytical people that are trying to get out of the lizard brain, or what I call the we're all going to die fear, kind of the instinctive thing, right? How do you help people get out of that?
I think there are a couple of things that contribute to that. So one is feeling like you are the only one who is failing at a thing. So I like to play a game with my clients called Pressure's Bingo. And I have listened to people's secrets for the last 6 years, basically. Everybody comes to me and tells me, you know, like, I'm so behind. I haven't figured it out, but everybody else has. And every single person is telling me the same thing. So I'm like, who are these people that haven't figured out, right? So I see as part of my job, I want to tell all these secrets because we're all saying the same thing, except you're all just saying it to me instead of to each other. So I've collected the top 10 pressures that people feel, and I read out the list. And I'm like, okay, I just want you to see which ones you resonate with. This one, that one. And sometimes at the end, people, you know, burst out laughing. They're like, are you kidding me? Literally hit 10 out of 10 of those. You know, and I think it gives us a little bit of relief to see we are all swimming in a societal soup that has a lot of pressure. So if you can take off some of the pressure that you are the only one that is failing, or you are the one who doesn't have it figured out, I think that's one way that us analytically minded folk can get stuck. The second thing is this false binary of right decision and wrong decision, because that is just going to get us trapped for forever. So there's this great article in the Harvard Business Review called Stop Worrying About Making the Right Decision. Love it already. And they talk about how when we hyper focus on the moment of choice, so like, oh my gosh, I have this job opportunity. Am I going this direction? Am I going that direction? Am I going to management? Am I staying in individual contributor, right? We get so stressed out about this moment of decision that we take away all of our agency. Because yes, there is some randomness in a choice, but what is important in choices are the actions that you take in the days and weeks and months after you make a decision. So by zooming out a little bit and saying, okay, either of these could be right choices, right? Once we've done all the analyzing, we get to do that part, of course. But if we're like, okay, there's actually no right answer here, which one do I want to commit to? And what actions am I going to take on to make sure that this was the best choice that I could have made in that moment? And I think that blows people's mind, because we're looking for, I need to make the right decision so I avoid making the wrong decision.
Yeah, it's a principle of the pain of losing something, a perceived loss or an actual loss, feels twice as bad as an equal level of success.
Right.
So there's kind of this, we don't want to lose the pain. We don't want to go into the pain.
Humans, our brains are really trying to help, and sometimes they're making it difficult. Yeah.
Isn't it fascinating how we always respond to pain more than pleasure, though? It was like, it was like, I don't know. I really need to go for a dental checkup, but my teeth feel great, so I'm not going to go. 2 years later, it's a root canal. It's like a couple of extractions. It was like I know it's a silly example, but us as humans, we tend to have that. We need a kick in the butt, right? To actually get over some inertia, to walk a little bit closer to that precipice. Because you're absolutely right. We do build up all these preconceived that list of 10 fears, right? That, it's going to be this, I'm not going to be able to do that, it's going to impact so and so, what are they going to think about me, etc., etc. Have you got another story, or maybe an example of someone who came to you kind of with those sort of concerns, those preconceived fears, maybe someone who'd been in that space for quite a while, and then the result was, oh my
goodness, he's asking how do you unpetrify someone?
There you go, straight to the point.
I love that. I feel like that's a blog post that needs to be written. The process of unpetrifying. Yeah, so I work with a lot of senior leaders who have been in their company for 10 plus years. So some folks have been there for 10 years, some are 15, some are 23. So at that point, we're like pretty stressed about the idea of making a change. And what I do across my program is to lovingly kind of whack people over the head with who they are. And every exercise we do gets them feeling like themselves again, gets them confident about what they bring, gets them clear that even though it seems like they've been all over the place, they are actually a deeply consistent human. And this is a message that I tell all my clients. It says it right here. Oh, I'm very bad at pointing in this way. So if I can kind of support somebody to think over and over and over again, wait a minute, I have a thread of things that I know about myself. I have values that are important to me. I have a really clear set of things that make me feel fulfilled in my work. I have a really clear set of strengths that feel awesome to me and I can contribute to a workplace. That's how I get people less focused on the fear of like, am I even good enough to make a change? Would I be able to take a job anywhere else? All of that. And then they can just have this really quiet but grounded confidence of like, oh, I got this. I have something to contribute. So one of my clients, I think he'd been there for 17 years. And his worry was, I'm a pretty big fish in a small pond right now. And I can't tell if I'm actually awesome or I've just been here for too long and I think I'm awesome, but I'm not actually going to be valuable anywhere else. And that's a really hard place to be. But I remember the moment, sometimes it like goes slowly. I can watch people's gears ticking of like, okay, I'm learning about myself. I'm, starting to feel something. I'm understanding this clarity and confidence. And then there's usually a moment where they're just like, oh my gosh, this is wild. My brain has, my mindset has totally changed. And for this guy, it was after we did a StrengthsFinder assessment. So I happen to be a fan of StrengthsFinder. We did it a lot when I was at Google. For me, it gets clients really great results. And after that, he was just like, oh, he wrote me this email and said, basically, buckle up because I am fired up and StrengthsFinder's nailed me. And so he had this different experience of, I am valuable. I have been valuable at this company and it's no longer where I choose to contribute, but I can go out there with confidence and go find somewhere else where I want to bring my awesome strengths, my awesome experience. And, talk about pressure. People who have worked at small companies for too long, they're like, oh, that's going to be a problem because now I can't work at big companies. But the flip side is happening too. People who are at big companies are stressing out about like, oh, well, I've been at a big company too long and now I can't work at a small company. So basically with career pressure, you can't win because whatever you're feeling, the flip side is happening with somebody else. But I think that's really how I get people into that just like deep sense of confidence. And that is my TED Talk on how we unpetrify people.
I love it.
There you go. Fantastic.
I think this would be a great joint article for us to write. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yes. I love it.
For the person who is starting up their tech startup, so infant mortality usually happens in the first 2 years as business crashes. And once you get past that point, it's not a big number. But for that, we see that, James and I see this a lot, particularly in the tech space.
Yeah.
So they've survived, they survived 90% of their competition is gone because they just didn't make it. But now it's almost like their brain is so locked into the analytical parts of their business. So someone like that comes to you and wants to come, I jokingly say, but most of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to come back into the human race a little bit.
Mm.
How would they come to you? Like, what's the process look like?
Yeah.
The framework. See, I'm stealing your word. The framework.
I love it. I love it. I think one thing is work is one aspect of life. And for different people, that's going to be a different size of the pie. So for some people, work is a really big part of their life. And it's going to be a lot of meaning and passion and purpose and drive. And probably if you're doing your own company, that's going to be a pretty big slice. For others, it's a smaller slice. So I think one of the things that I do, yes, we're doing career coaching. We're talking about your career a lot. But one of the things that clients say over and over again is, I figured out the work piece of the life that I want. And I think that's a really important part, especially when running a company, because dear goodness, we are working hard out here. And, I'm a one-woman business. I don't have inventory. I don't have funding. I don't have, all the other things that really complicate things. And it's hard as a one-person business. So I know how hard you're working, and there can be parts that fall away as you're doing the business. So I think it's really like, what are the other parts in life that you want to get back in touch with? And I think that makes you feel more of a fully formed human. A lot of people talk to me about, hobbies, right? The joke of like, hobbies, isn't that something I did in high school? Like, what? Do we do that anymore? And spending time with family, and also different phases of life have different pieces. One of my favorite clients that I've ever gotten to work with was 68. And the pressure that he felt, because surprise, the pressure never goes away. It just changes at different phases of your career. He was like, man, everyone's trying to tell me to retire. They're like, can you just calm down and relax? You're 68 now. And basically his answer is like, no, I feel great. I have so much I want to contribute, and I want to get up to the next phase of my life. So he ended up purchasing starting a franchise business and just doing a bunch of fun stuff after different careers that he's had. So I think that's also an interesting way to think about different phases. So as you talk about, like there's the intense phase of, I got to make this business work. But then once we switch into a latter phase, what are the things that maybe fell away that you want to bring back in? What are those things that you value?
Man, that is really, really helpful information. Tell us what's next. I mean, you've already become really famous in a short time. So
in my short 6 years at working away really hard at this.
I laugh because people tell me and James that all the time. It's like, well, your investing fund's doing great. I'm like, yeah, it was a 30-year overnight success. We've been at this a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
And markets like right now are extremely painful, but we've been through them before.
Yeah.
So you got the book coming out pretty soon. That's exciting. How do people get that?
Oh my goodness. Book is coming out. I could not be more excited to share basically every single thought I have ever had about careers is in this book, which I love. So my brain actually feels like quite calm after I wrote the book. I'm like, it's all on the outside now. This is great. So it is going to be out on September 5th, and it will be available on Amazon, and I'll probably have a link to it on my website, which is alifeofoptions.com. And I would love for book to create relief and focus and momentum for as many people as possible. So the tagline of the book is structure your thinking, make a decision about anything you're waffling about, and move forward with your career and your life. So it's really my love letter to anyone that has been waffling for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years. No judgment about how long the waffling has been happening, but I really want people to get decided about what they want so they can move forward. So that's for book. My long-term vision, and I have no idea how I get there, but I just say it out loud all the time because at some point I'm going to figure out how to get there, is I am accidentally running an employee retention program because of the senior leaders who come to me thinking that they need to quit, because usually quitting seems like the only option that we have. More than 50% of them don't end up quitting. And it's very fascinating to me, and it really surprised me in the beginning of my business. And I'm just like, okay, clearly I'm running employee retention. Getting people clear about what they want helps them not quit. Yeah. And so what I would love to be in the future, anytime a senior leader goes to leadership and says like, I've been here 23 years. I'm just not sure. It might be time for me to move on. They say, hold on, go talk to Lindsay. She's going to take you through a really structured process, and we're going to get you incredibly clear about what it is you want, what's going to make you feel really fulfilled. And then we are going to have the best conversation of our lives to figure out if there is a fit for you at this company. And if not, great. We're going to help you figure out what the next thing is. But I want to enable that conversation. So I kind of want to be known as like the quit interventionist for senior leaders. I need a snappier name. It doesn't roll off the tongue, but that's what I would love to be up to in this world.
I think we have a pretty good network, and I'm already thinking of people to connect you to because this is super, super powerful. So, audience, you can get a hold of Lindsay. There's going to be links below the episode as usual. Lindsay, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share? Business lessons, life lessons, framework lessons, whatever.
All the frameworks.
Trapeze lessons.
Oh man. Yeah, I've had a wild life. I have many, many different interests. What would I love to say? I think I would just love to reinforce this thought of you get to do what's right for you. Because I think it is actually a message that we don't get a lot, especially with society, especially with pressure. We put pressure on ourselves. But I really am interested in what works for you and helping you get clear about that and helping you really own that and being able to set aside some of the pressure that exists, because it also happens when we run a business. Right? It's like, oh, well, I have to run a business this way. Or, I fall into the trap of like, I'm not going to be professional if I'm not XYZ, maybe I should have a little less fun because maybe it's not professional for me to be, having this much fun in my company, whatever it is. I think there's so much pressure that shows up in running a business. So I have to remind myself periodically of I actually get to run this business in ways that feel great to me and serve people in the way that I want to. So in the business that you are running, if you are running one, I would just lovingly want to remind you that you get to do what feels right for you. And that's not always easy. There's a lot that gets away in that. There are systemic barriers that get in the way of that. So we'll balance the two. So yes, discover what's right for you so you have your agency, and know that there are very real barriers that make that hard for a lot of people.
Brilliant. Just wow. Any final thoughts, James?
Lindsay, we're always so very grateful that you could spend some time. I found it, I think I'm right saying, Mike, that Lindsay's our first career coach. And as always, it's opened so many doors. We always learn so much. So thank you. And yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. This has been delightful.